This is CBC Radio 1, 990 AM, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg.
You have lots of questions about your own life and this really complex world around you. I'm Saroja Coelho. I'm the host of the new live call-in show, Just Asking. I take your questions about what's in the news or your finances, health, even your relationships, and then throw them to an expert. Just Asking. Let's figure it out together.
Just Asking with Saroja Coelho. Live Saturday afternoon at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, and on CBC Listen.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app for...
This is CBC News. At 12 o'clock, we're at 17 degrees with blue skies over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The Crown has made opening statements in the first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Skibicki. The 37-year-old is charged with the killings of 4 women. The Crown says this case is about a man's hate-filled and cruel acts against Indigenous women and say his actions were not only intentional but racially motivated. The Crown says Skibicki preyed on women outside Winnipeg homeless shelters and would then take them back to his apartment. Skibicki has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and a 4th unidentified woman given the name Mashkode Bishikikwe Iban, or Buffalo Woman. Skibicki's lawyers argue he is not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. A 50-year-old Winnipeg man has been arrested for second-degree murder in connection with a shooting last month. 28-year-old Bill Brian Duck was found with a gunshot wound at Flora and McGregor on April 26th. He died in hospital. A warrant had been issued for the suspect. Late last night, patrolling police saw a pickup make an evasive turn in front of them. They followed the vehicle to Burroughs and Parr, wherein the man inside got out of the truck and made a run for it. He was quickly arrested. Police say the victim and accused did not know each other. A City of Winnipeg committee has to decide how it will cover cost increases for a new recreation campus in Waverley West. As the CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the area councillor wants the city to take on more debt.
The cost of the South Winnipeg Recreation Campus has jumped by $23 million since City Council first approved the budget 5 years ago. That's left the city with 3 options: reduce the size of the project by removing elements like a running track or gymnasium, lobby other levels of government for more money, or take on more debt. Waverley West Councillor Janice Lukes told the Community Services Committee she favors the latter 2 options. She wants the city to approve the debt to ensure the project stays on track, and then continue to seek more funding from the province and federal government. The committee will debate the proposal later today. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The federal government is facing fresh pushback over its revised telework rules for federal public servants. Unions representing the employees say they made 2 formal complaints against the government. Sean O'Reilly is with the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada.
We filed a policy grievance challenging the fact that this unilateral change bypassed the employer's legal obligation to engage in proper and meaningful consultation with us. We've also formally launched a labor complaint against Treasury Board for its actions, which violate legislation and our collective agreements.
Last week, the government directed public servants to be in the office 3 days a week starting September. That is up from 2 days a week currently. Treasury Board Minister Anita Anand says Ottawa is well within its right to order the change.
A hybrid work environment is not within the collective agreements. It is something that the Government of Canada retained prerogative over to determine the scope of the hybrid environment.
Anand argues the policy shift offers both flexibility and fairness to workers. Ontario police have laid hundreds of charges related to the sexual exploitation of children. More than 60 people were arrested for making and distributing material featuring sexual abuse. An investigation by 27 different police forces involved undercover operations and the seizure of multiple electronic devices. OPP Staff Sergeant Tim Brown says police are committed to holding perpetrators accountable, but he admits it's an uphill battle.
With each passing year, the tools used by predators who wish to harm our children grow more sophisticated and harder to trace. From advanced encryption to the dark web, these factors add to the complexity of police investigations.
Brown says the surge of AI also means investigators must differentiate between real and synthetic victims. At least 100 people are now confirmed dead due to heavy rains in southern Brazil. Civil defense officials say more than 100 more are still missing. In the flooded streets of El Dorado do Sul, a driver uses his front-end loader to rescue residents trapped in their homes. The floods left thousands homeless, without food or basic supplies. The rain began last week, and swollen rivers inundated whole towns and destroyed roads and bridges. Hundreds of millions of people across South and Southeastern Asia are baking this month in an intense heat wave. From India east to the Philippines, daytime highs are regularly reaching 45 degrees Celsius. And for farmers, there are concerns about the health of their livestock.
They are in a very pathetic condition. They can't go out. That is unbearable to them. Really, they are not eating anything because of this heat.
Weather officials say for many regions, the worst of the heat wave is yet to come. And you're going to hear an alarming sound this afternoon. A test is being carried out today of the National Public Alerting System. It comes as coast to coast, as federal emergency support officials measure its capacity to alert the public about imminent danger, such as extreme weather. In Manitoba, the alert will be broadcast over your cell phone, radio, and TV at 1:55 this afternoon. In Winnipeg today, sunny skies, a high around 21. Brandon, windy and partly cloudy, a high of 20. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Good afternoon and welcome to Radio Noon. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten, filling in for Janet Stewart. What a beautiful day out there. Going to 21 did Matt say? And right now, Winnipeg is the hot spot. It's 17.4 degrees. We need all those degreeses when it's getting this warm. And coming up on the show today, new preliminary data shows that drug-related deaths are surging in our province. We'll hear from the director of Sunshine House's mobile overdose prevention site. And the refit store in Brandon is planning its own refit. The plan is to turn the building into affordable rental units. That's coming up in just a minute. And after the 12:30 news, after too many complaints, technical issues, and even some theft, a grocery store chain is getting rid of self-checkouts. Should we? We'll talk about that. Give me a call. But first, Brandon's building refit store is closing its doors. For nearly 3 decades, furniture and building materials destined for the landfill have been rescued and resold at low prices to the public. But now, Community Health and Housing Association, which operates the store, is planning to transform the 100-year-old building into affordable housing. The upper floor will become apartments, with the main floor serving as much-needed office space for the organization. The refit store has always been strongly supported by the local community, with more than 100,000 items repurposed for reuse. Glenn Kruk is the former executive director of the CHHA and current project manager. Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to you, Laurie.
So why did Westmans Community Health and Housing decide to close the refit store?
Well, when we started 30 years ago, we were the only business doing that. And there was so much product going to the landfill, which is just a waste. And also we were looking at creating a business to employ individuals who needed employment disadvantaged individuals. So that's why we created the building refit store.
And what's changed?
Well, right now there are 3 organizations who do very similar to us in that they collect used furniture and building supplies. So we don't really need to do that anymore. But there's a great need in the city of Brandon for housing units, especially for low-income families and homeless families.
So tell me a bit a bit about what the project will entail.
Well, on the main floor, we will have our offices. And on the second floor, we plan on doing 16 family units. And the beautiful part about that is that you will have supports right in this building for the families. So it's a very good mixture. And the other beautiful part about it is that by reusing a 100-year-old building, we're saving a whole ton of construction costs because the structure is already there.
Tell me a bit more about the building. It's been through a few changes over the years.
It started as Western Groceries over 100 years ago. And after that, we bought it. So, no, it's only a couple transitions. And now we'll be moving into housing.
What are these units going to be like? You say they're family units. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, first I want to tell you a little bit about a catch-22. When we work with, say, for example, a single mother who is successful in the sense that she's eligible to get her kids back. But one of the problems she has is that in order to get her kids back, she needs to have a bigger apartment with, a bedroom for each child. Well, if she's on social assistance, she cannot get that bedroom, that apartment, because she's a single person. So it's that awkward catch-22, whereas if you're entitled to get your kids back, but if you can't get the apartment, so therefore you can't get the kids back. So that's one of the pieces that we will be able to help families transition, because we will, even though it's a single mother, we can put them into a larger apartment so that therefore they can get their kids back.
And how great is the need for housing?
Oh, gosh. Right now, we operate 10 emergency homeless units in the city of Brandon. And sometimes we have families, with 5 kids in a 200 square foot homeless unit. So that is really difficult for them to manage. But at the same time, if they got no place to go, so it's going to be a game changer for them.
But what needs to happen before construction begins?
Well, we applied for a Canada Mortgage and Housing seed grant. So we applied for $150,000 so that we can do the structural assessment of the building, the environmental assessment, the architectural plans. So we are at this point in time waiting to hear from Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and hopefully we'll have our funding application approved.
So is this a done deal, or is there a possibility it may not happen?
Well, we are still waiting for that. We are determined to make it happen one way or the other. But if we secure the seed grant, it will help us so much because it makes our units so much more affordable.
So that's after the units are built that money would be applied.
Well, the $150,000 would be used for all those preliminary expenses which we would have to handle. So if we have the environmental assessment done and the architectural plans done and the structural plans done, that reduces the cost of our housing project. So therefore we'd be able to, it just lowers our overall cost to do this.
And when are you planning on getting the work going?
Well, I would like to start tomorrow. We are ready to, we would absolutely like to start as soon as possible because there is a very great need for these units. So the sooner we can get started, the better.
Well, I understand there's a giant clearance sale on right now because your last day of being open is May 25th. What are you hearing from customers?
Oh, well, it's awesome. Like this week, it's 50% off all items. Next week, it's 75% off. And then in the last week, it's 100% off because we need to clear all inventory so we can start with our plans.
And you've been with the refit store a long time. How are you feeling about it closing?
I feel very great. Like I started that project over 30 years ago, and I love where it's transitioning. There was a very great need for it 30 years ago, but now not so much. The greater need is for family units, and I'm so thrilled that that is where it's going.
Thanks very much for your time today, Glenn.
And thank you, Lori.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Glenn Crook is project manager for Westman's Community Health and Housing Association. Their last day is May 25th, and what a sale. 50% off today, 75% tomorrow, and 100% on Friday. That's what I call a bargain.
Danse, Anine, Bonjour, and hello. It's me, your favorite cousin, Rosanna Deerchild. Guess what? Unreserved is turning 10. That's like 100 in Res Dog years. And to celebrate, we're inviting you to a live taping of Unreserved, May 22nd at the Park Theatre in Winnipeg on Treaty 1 territory. Sherry McKay, Doozy, and Unreserved's Auntie Circle will all be there. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community and click on the link to register.
You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM, 990 AM. Just coming up to 16 minutes after 12 o'clock. And coming up in the show, in this half hour, new preliminary data shows that drug-related deaths are surging in the province, and we'll hear from the director of Sunshine House's mobile overdose prevention site to hear what they say is needed to deal with the ongoing crisis. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you, and an expert, of course, about self-checkouts. Are they a good thing? Are they ruining our lives? Is it somewhere in between? They're meant to save us time and save retailers money, but the self-checkouts don't always work like that, and more retail outlets are choosing to ditch them. Give me a call about that after the 12:30 news. You can call me at 204-780-0893 or 1-800-268-5483, or you can leave a voicemail at 204-788-3797. And now for some more numbers. We're going to hear about temperatures in our region. I'm Lori Hoogstraten. Riley Lachuk has joined me. We're going to hear about all the ins and outs of it in just a moment. And surprise, Riley Lachuk. Riley, why are you here?
I wasn't meant to be here, but here I am.
Oh, good.
19 degrees in Winnipeg right now.
Okay.
Very nice day. We'll talk a bit more about that in the forecast coming up at the bottom of the clock, of course, but aiming for a high of 21
Beautiful.
In Winnipeg this afternoon, Lori. Mainly sunny skies throughout the province today. And we're looking at a pretty gorgeous, at least for southern Manitoba, gorgeous week ahead. Maybe some showers across parts of northern Manitoba as we head through into the day on Thursday, especially along the Hudson Bay coast. But by and large, we're looking at temperatures in the south at least into the 20s, and in some cases by the weekend looking at temperatures up to the mid-20s.
Oh, well, thanks, Riley, for jumping in. Riley was in the studio looking after some technical things, but I thought, oh no, let's get some real details from the real weather specialist. Thanks very much, Riley.
See you in a bit.
And we'll talk to him in a little while. It is just coming up to 17 minutes after 12 o'clock. You're listening to Radio Noon. 56 people died from drug-related deaths this past January in Manitoba, while in January of 2023, there were 39. This according to new preliminary data from the province. It says 44 of those deaths involved the presence of an opioid. 36 of those deaths also involved fentanyl. And for the first time, it also saw 18 cases of a naloxone-resistant designer drug known as DAG. For Winnipegger Davy Cole, these stats are more than just numbers. They're the director of Sunshine House's mobile overdose prevention site, Manitoba's only overdose prevention site. They told Information Radio host Emily Brass what it's like seeing the lives behind those numbers.
Yeah, I mean, those numbers aren't just numbers. That's 2 deaths a day almost. That's people, and, when you've been affected by this work for a long time, that hits home. You know the process, that, you look in the city and you can just look out into the crowd and you can see people who've been affected by this drug toxicity crisis, and so when you hear those numbers, it just, it really hits home in a different way.
Yeah, and, it sounds like it has an effect on you personally, too. Like, how do you keep it up with day in, day out when you see those troubling situations?
It is a crisis. It's called that for a reason, So the folks of us that have been in this work for a long time, there's ways to sustain, and it's through community, and it's through constantly fighting for our people and against the stigma. And, there's joy in the work, because what we're ultimately trying to do is just keep people alive, just keep each other alive,
Wow, yeah. What a sense of purpose that is. So how would you describe what you're seeing right now at the mobile clinic?
On the MOP site, it's a very busy site. As you said, it's the first of its kind here in Manitoba. So we're in our second summer, or going into our second summer, and it's extremely busy. It's a very hopping place. But when we see those numbers, we look at what we also have is the data from the city over the first year of having our first mobile overdose prevention site. We had 40,000 plus visits and 0 deaths. Half of those people were actively using on site. So we know that this works. We have the data from our own city. So while it is, it's hard on the heart, to work in this, but it's also, we can see that things are working, and we can see that the community there really wants to take care of each other, and that really sustains the work,
Well, congratulations on those numbers. Why do you think we're seeing this surge right now in drug-related deaths?
It's hard because there's been a lot of, drug busts throughout the country and whatnot. And, while that looks a certain way, those of us working on the streets know that means less access to what people know, or the dealers they know. It means that the regulation or the lack of regulation of toxic drugs really affects the front line, and so we really need to start looking at the drug toxicity crisis as an actual crisis, and start thinking of what are other ways to address of that. Because, people are going to do drugs. They know the drugs they want to do, and they should be able to have the autonomy to choose that, and not just some random drug that is new designer drug or whatnot,
And that new data also flags the emergence in Manitoba, as you mentioned, of a new designer benzodiazepine known as DAG. What have you been hearing about that drug?
I've been hearing about it from other cities and whatnot. We haven't specifically seen anything we've tested on site, but we hear rumors of it from people and folks. It's really cool with the drug testing that we have set up. The community has really responded to that. And when we hear of things, we start to put out little whispers and be like, hey, if you hear anything, let us know and whatnot. And folks will come and test their supply with this knowledge. And I think that's a really cool thing it's a really cool way to address this,
So that is something you can test for.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Wow. And the latest provincial budget sets aside $2.5 million for a supervised consumption site in Winnipeg, but consultations need to happen first. What's at stake here with that?
I think what's at stake is we need to get moving. Manitoba is historically pretty behind in harm reduction stuff, and we're on our way, and that's exciting. But community is ready. People who've been doing this for a long time are ready. So I'm excited to get this going, and people's lives are at stake. So we got to get moving on the harm reduction in the city.
And do you wish that the budget was more specific for any of that stuff, or?
I'm excited to hear the specifics on those numbers, and I'm excited to hear more funding coming down the line for these things.
Okay. And how different do you think the number might be, that $2.5 million if harm reduction or safer supply programs were happening already here? Do you think that, like you said, we're a little behind? Do you think that number is going to make up for it?
I think it's a good start, and I think that we need to look at the data that we not only have recently and that will come out of this, and really invest in that, because we have the data from other cities. We're at an exciting time where we have our own data from here, so I think we got to jump on that and work with the system, or work with this the way that works.
Mm-hmm. So, are you feeling any hope at this point with this?
I am feeling hopeful that things are on the move and things are going. And after working for it for a long time, it feels very exciting. But yeah, just got to keep going.
Davy Cole is director of Sunshine House's mobile overdose prevention site. We've got time to squeeze in a tune, I think, before we get to the news. Let's hear from Stephen Fearing off his 2006 album Yellow Jacket. Here he is with Like Every Other Morning.
Bite the hand that feeds from the depths of our despair in the hour of need, and the neighborhood is sleeping. There's a sorrow you can't drown, not a single light on. I've been on the road, you're going down. So put your heart away for a while, till the morning rises in front of you, like every other morning. Find our clues. Who knows anybody else? But you walk away from love, you're running from yourself. And I know how much this hurts, 'cause you don't even have to talk to me. At the bottom of the well, it's dark and lonely. So put your heart away for a while, till the morning rises in front of you, like every other morning.
Stephen Fearing, like every other morning. We're just coming up to the news, but I got time to ask you to weigh in with your opinions about self-checkouts. They may be going the way of the dodo, or they may not. Some retailers are getting rid of them, partly because they're irritating, but partly because they're not economically very effective. There have been a lot of complaints, and I guess a lot of people like them as well. What about you? Do you like self-checkouts? Do you hate them? Do you have a funny story about them? You can call me even now at 204-780-0893, and Corey will get you lined up on the phone, 1-800-268-5483. We're talking about self-checkouts, good or bad. Let's talk about it. The news is next.
This is CBC News. At 12:30, we're at 17 degrees without a cloud in the sky over downtown Winnipeg. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Humphrey. The Crown has made opening statements in the first-degree murder trial of Jeremy Skibicki. The 37-year-old is charged with the killings of 4 women. The Crown says this case is about a man and his hate-filled and cruel acts against Indigenous women, and say his actions were not only intentional but racially motivated. The Crown says Skibicki preyed on women outside Winnipeg homeless shelters and would then take them back to his apartment. Skibicki has pleaded not guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and a 4th unidentified woman given the name Mashkode Bishikikwe Iban. Skibicki's lawyers argue he is not criminally responsible due to a mental disorder. There are reports the Biden administration is holding up an American arms shipment to Israel. A senior White House official says it's part of the U.S. campaign to slow the Israeli military campaign in southern Gaza and keep the ceasefire talks moving forward. Chris Glover has more from Washington.
As Israel's military continues its incursion in Rafah, it's reportedly doing so with less help from its biggest backer. U.S. officials say a shipment of arms to Israel was held back. This shipment paused last week includes thousands of heavy bombs.
Could have a significant impact.
Retired Colonel Cedric Layton says the bombs have been vital to Israel, destroying Hamas underground.
They've employed 2,000-pound bombs to go after that tunnel network because they have the capacity to destroy those tunnel networks.
Palestinians in Gaza, meantime, now stuck fleeing Rafah, the place many had been told to escape to. While the fighting continues, so does tense negotiating on a hostage release ceasefire deal. The head of the CIA leading the U.S. negotiation team in the region today flies to Israel to meet directly with Netanyahu. Chris Glover, CBC News, Washington.
And a City of Winnipeg committee has decided how it will cover cost increases for a new recreation campus in Waverly West. The cost of the South Winnipeg Recreation Campus has jumped by $23 million since City Council first approved the budget 5 years ago. That's left the city with 3 options: reduce the size of the project by removing elements like a running track or the gym, lobby other levels of government for more money, or take on more debt. Waverly West Councillor Janice Lukes told the Community Services Committee she favors the latter 2 options. She wants the city to approve the debt to ensure the project stays on track and then continue to seek more funding from the province and federal government. The committee will debate the proposal later today. And for news anytime, head on over to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba, or use the CBC News app.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Back soon.
That was Matt Humphreys with the news. And joining me in the studio, once again, I might say, is weather specialist Riley Lachek to tell us all about the beautiful day out there.
I don't have a lot to talk about today, Lori.
Okay, bye.
Good or bad, I don't know, but we'll get into it. So we are looking at high pressure setting in, which will clear skies and really warm us up as we get into the next few days. And we're really looking at temperatures, at least in southern Manitoba, above seasonal for the next week or so. Temperatures right now across southern Manitoba, 19s for both Winnipeg and Steinbach. Brandon, Dauphin, both at 16 degrees this hour, and 8 in Thompson. We've cleared out quite nicely since that rainy system kind of moved out of the province through the overnight period last night. So we're looking at still a few clouds hanging around in extreme southern Manitoba. But by and large, the rest of us under a mainly sunny sky. And that's what we're looking at as we get through the rest of the day here in southern Manitoba. A clearing sky, sunny conditions right through the evening. A little bit of cloud starts to build into the north. This ahead of a very weak area of instability that will push through northern Manitoba, basically Flin-Flon north from the early part of tomorrow morning, moving west to east across northern Manitoba, bringing a few showers throughout the day tomorrow. Not an accumulating rain per se, but certainly could see some scattered showers on and off throughout the day for places like Thompson, even as far south as Norway House, Island Lake, the Hudson Bay coast, looking at a few showers as well through the day on Thursday. That clears out very quickly, and we're back to mainly sunny skies province-wide as we get through the day Friday and into Saturday. Rainfall accumulations for northern Manitoba, looking at maybe about 2 to 5 millimeters or so through northernmost regions of the province. Just kind of some scattered showers on and off. Nothing really to write home about. We're looking at temperatures 21s for both Portage and Winnipeg today. Morden, Winkler, 21 as well. We're looking at some clouds clearing out through the afternoon still in extreme southern Manitoba. Brandon, a high of 20 this afternoon, 16 in Thompson, 5 in Churchill today. And we're looking at sun all around for the next 5 days. 21 for Thursday, 20 for Friday, 24 for Saturday, 20 for Sunday.
Thank you very much, Riley.
No problem.
That's Riley Lechek, our weather specialist, and you can hear him this afternoon from 3 to 6 on Up to Speed, or you can see him on TV on CBC News at 6. All right, this is the phone-in portion of the program, and today we are talking about self-checkouts. Were they a mistake? Do you like them? Do you use them? I'd really like to hear from you on that at 204-780-0893 or 1-800-268-5483. CBC has been reporting on a number of retail outlets in Canada and beyond that have decided to do away with self-checkout machines. Do you find that good news, bad news? The reasons vary, but some retailers say it's a way to prevent shoplifting. Would you like it if self-checkouts went away? Call me. 204-780-0893. That's 204-780-0893 or 1-800-268-5483. And actually, Tim called our listener line with his thoughts.
If they got rid of self-checkouts but properly staffed actual cash registers with cashiers, I don't see a problem. I started going to self-checkouts because they're generally faster than getting in line at the regular checkouts. You don't really need self-checkouts if you're properly paying staff and employing people.
Thanks, Tim. Well, our guest for this conversation is Marvin Ryder, an associate professor of marketing and entrepreneurship at McMaster University. And we'll be listening to his expertise, but do give us a call with your thoughts as well. Hello, Marvin Ryder.
Hello there.
So let's start on a personal level. If given the choice between a human cashier and a self-checkout, which one would you choose?
To me, it all depends upon the circumstances. If I'm doing a big weekly shopping trip where I have 15, 20, 50 items, I prefer having somebody else run it through while I'm busy bagging it. But if I go to the grocery store and I'm just there to get a jug of orange juice and I get into some long line, I switch over to the self-checkout without blinking twice. And maybe to think of it a different way, when was the last time you had someone pump your gas for you? Or when was the last time you went to the bank? Most people today go to ATMs or use a smartphone app. Self-service is actually the norm and becoming increasingly so. The question for the retailers in the grocery business is, was it the right time to move? So even those that are talking about removing self-checkout, they're removing it for now, not necessarily forever. And so there was a time in which they thought the technology was robust enough. It's worked in many ways very well, but maybe not perfectly. And so that's the question. Do we take it out temporarily, get something better, or go from there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to consider there. But so listeners, where do you fall on this one? How would you feel if self-checkouts went away? Give me a call at 204-780-0893 and the toll-free number 1-800-268-5483. Yeah, I know what you mean, Marvin. I didn't think about connecting it with gas and the bank and so on, partly because I live in a small town where they do still pump your gas, if you can believe it. But I always find with the self-checkout, if I have to buy something like vegetables, and you have to like look up the letter of the vegetable, and I look at it and I think, does O come before P? It's all very complicated. So sometimes it's, as you say, handy, and sometimes less so. But were you surprised to hear that theft has jumped in so many stores since they started using self-checkouts?
Well, yes, a little, although there are two kinds of theft that these grocery stores are experiencing. There is the inadvertent theft. I have 12 items and somehow I only scanned 11. I might never discover the fact that I never paid for the 12th. And so there's leakage that way. But then there's also the planned theft. And this is what we're seeing in Ontario, at least, with those grocery stores that carry beer and wine, that there are people going in there and buying 12 cans of beer, but only checking out 6 of them and then running and pocketing the difference. And this is what's caused some grocery stores to say we need a better way of dealing with this because we can't trust people. Can I add just quickly, last year I visited a little country called Lithuania. And one night I was out walking around and I decided I needed a soft drink. I went to a robotics store. I had to scan a credit card to enter. Once I got inside the store, there wasn't a staff person. I took various items from the shelf. And by the time I got to the cash register, the store told me what items I had taken from the shelf and wanted to know if I was going to use the same credit card to pay for them. Once I said yes, the door opened and I left. I never saw a person. That's the technology we call AI, or artificial intelligence, and you're going to see more of that going forward. That's where I think stores will get around the theft problem by the use of artificial intelligence.
Well, welcome to the future. We have Sean on the line and hear what his thoughts are about self-checkouts. Hello, Sean.
Hi there. I was just thinking that the machines can stay. They make for less. Let me start again. The machines should be made to pay the same federal, provincial, and municipal taxes that the people they replace would be generating in the same amount of time. A human being actually contributes to my neighborhood in those ways, amongst many others, in a way that machine is not. The company still gets to not pay a human being an hourly wage, but they should be required to cover at least the taxes that a human being would have generated during the time that machine was in operation.
So do you ever use the self-checkout yourself, or do you avoid it?
I would say, much like your guest, I use it for express lane checkouts when everything else is very full. But I'm chatty and I prefer the human touch. So whenever I can, I use humans for that very reason.
Well, it often seems that there's fewer humans, as Tim was pointing out, so that people are almost driven to the self-checkout lines. Do you find that?
Well, I submit to you that the ratio of machines to clerks has certainly changed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, there was a time when, there was always a time, right?
Yeah.
But I just think that, if they want to bring the machine, if they want to have the machines, they should be required to at least pay for the taxes that a human being would have. And I think that really they should go back to human beings in general, but I understand that machines are here to stay.
As in Lithuania, the machines are here to stay. Well, we'll find out what Marvin has to say about that. Thanks very much for your call, Sean.
No problem.
All right. And if you have an opinion on self-checkouts, do give me a call, 204-780-0893. So, Marvin, what do you think about what Sean had to say?
Well, again, I love his empathy for the situation, but it doesn't match the reality. When I was a boy, I used to go to a grocery store and I found that every can and every box was labeled with a price. There used to be a nice person, a stock boy, who stamped those things and then loaded the shelves. Then we introduced UPC codes. There hasn't been a price on a product in decades. And those jobs were lost and nobody made them pay. I go back to the teller and the bank. We have fewer bank tellers because we use ATMs. Nobody's making up for those lost taxes. I get what he's saying, but we're applying one standard to the grocery store and we've applied a different standard to every other use of technology out there.
I wonder, has the tax setup changed generally, do you suppose? Because when he was pointing out that they should be paying for the tax that the person would normally owe, the employee.
So there the question is, if we displace a person, what happens to them? Well, they don't become unemployed. We have some of the lowest unemployment in Canadian history at the moment. And so clearly people who are losing the jobs in the grocery store are able to find work in other places. And so their taxes aren't really lost to the system.
Mm-hmm.
The tax from that employer is lost to the system, but those people are getting gainful employment and still contributing to the tax base. So it's not really a zero-sum game. They have found other employment.
I wonder if we're getting used to them. And I'm asking our listeners, do you have any stories about the self-checkout, where it's worked for you or where you had a dismal failure or where someone really helped you? Give me a call, 204-780-0893. And so you're saying the cashier jobs may have been eliminated, but those people aren't necessarily unemployed. Now, the Wall Street Journal reported this week that retailers like Walmart and Target are scaling back self-checkouts to curb theft and irritation. How strong has the pushback been against the machines since they've been around?
Right. So generally speaking, when surveys are done of consumers, you find that between 65 and 75% of consumers are happy or okay with, tolerate self-checkout out there. About 25% to 35% just hate them like anything. But if I take that sample and break it by age group, what you find is that the older the person is, the more irritated they are. In other words, I'm a university professor, and the students I teach at the university, who are roughly 20 years of age, they love self-checkout. They don't want to get into any line. They want to be able to buy and run and go now. They don't want anything else. In fact, when you ask them about certain products they might buy, say at a drugstore, they actually think the checkout people are making judgments about them because they're buying a box of condoms, or maybe they're buying some fancy lipstick and, oh, you shouldn't be buying those sorts of things. They like the robot because the robot doesn't judge them. If you get to be older, and I think your last caller made a great point, older consumers view shopping a bit more socially. I like to go out. I like to have a little chat. I know the people who've been checking me out. So how are you doing? How are things with you? So they're missing that as we move to robot stores. But the bad news is, as we age, the younger people become the dominant and the older people, unfortunately, die off. Like all changes, this will become the standard at some point.
We'll just eventually get used to it.
Right.
Well, you mentioned the sort of demographics and the age groups and so on. It made me think right away how we talk about kind of the death of conversation, the death of small talk because of people becoming socially isolated by their screen, and the idea of having to talk to a stranger for 2 minutes, or not 2 minutes, or even 10 seconds as they're checking out your groceries. And interesting also that people would feel that they're being judged. So are there certain kinds of stores that work better as with self-checkouts than others? Like, are drugstores more efficient or more popular than, say, grocery stores? I was mentioning I hate it when I have to use self-checkout if I have vegetables because, it's just too challenging for me. What vegetable is that and how much does it cost?
Is that a French onion? Is that a Spanish onion? Is that a scallion? Which
exactly
number do I
right.
need?
That's right.
So to your point, it's actually pretty easy. The more a retailer deals with fairly standardized products, things that come in boxes or cans that are labeled, it makes it very easy to use self-checkout. You use the example of fresh fruits and vegetables. You can imagine meat might fall into that category. That makes it harder to do. So anything which has a more, rather than a standardized component, a customized component to the checkout, they're going to be harder to automate. But if you take a dollar store, dollar stores don't, generally speaking, deal with things that are perishable. They deal in boxed items, canned items. They're all labeled, scan the code, you get out. Self-checkout has done very well in a dollar store. Some grocery stores that specialize in certain kinds of products, you can think of health food stores or organic stores, that almost runs contrary to their mission. So I don't think you'll necessarily see them go everywhere out there. But the more standardized the product, the better the self-checkout experience.
Well, Marvin, we have Adelard on the line right now. Let's hear another opinion. Hello.
Well, hello. I just wanted to comment and say that, I like the self-checkout machines. I don't use them for huge, big orders when I go shopping because I find that the cashier is faster. But I still like to use the checkout for smaller orders. It's easy to navigate. You don't have to wait in a queue as a rule. There's no lineup. And by the way, I'm 79 years old, and I love the technology. Now, I realize that the theft is a problem, and for sure the grocery stores have to solve that because I don't want to have to be paying extra grocery bill for thieves. So there's my comment. Right.
Thank you very much, Adlard. And Marvin, that made me think again about the theft thing, where people were also, though, being resentful, where some stores had your bill checked as you went by, and people were affronted by that. Although I suppose that's a technique as well.
It is. Now, it's not a terribly efficient technique because you're actually putting people back into the system. Thus, the argument comes, if I'm having somebody check all the bills, why don't I just put that person at a cash register and we wouldn't need to do that? I'm never offended when somebody asks to see my bill because I haven't done anything wrong. So you want to check, there you go, and off we go. It's a 3-second thing. It's a minor inconvenience. But if you hate self-checkout, this is yet another reason to throw onto the pile. And all I can say is the opposite, as your last caller said. There are people who say, I like to have the choice. I'm not sure I want to be forced into one or the other, but I like to have the choice so that as I'm departing a grocery store, I can make the choice. If I have a small number of items and the self-checkout is free, I'm going there. If I have a larger number of items and the other lines aren't that bad, I'm going there. And so at the moment, that's what grocery stores are doing. They're trying to give you a choice between the self-checkout and the full-serve checkout.
All right. Well, now we have Jeff on the line. Jeff, how do you feel about self-checkouts?
I like them a lot. I really do. As a person that struggles with social anxiety, standing in a line, people within, a couple of feet of me really makes me anxious, and I don't like that at all. So self-checkout for me personally has been fantastic. I can get in, I can get out. I don't have to deal with people, which is sort of my situation, right? So,
well, that's very helpful for you then.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a big fan. I love it.
And how, would you suggest any ways to actually improve them for your own experience?
No, I don't struggle with them at all. But then, I'm not stealing anything either, right? So, I don't really have any suggestions that way. But no, I'm really happy with them. I got no problem with them whatsoever. Well, and that shopping that he was talking about, where you give your credit card before you go in, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, that's in Lithuania at the moment, but hey, coming to a store near you soon, probably.
Maybe. I think they have one in Toronto, in sports complex there, I think.
Is that right? Oh, we'll have to check into that. Interesting, and see how they're doing. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for the call, Jeff.
No problem. I am a big fan.
Oh, good. Okay, good to know. Self-checkouts, yay, gets a point from Jeff. And we have time to take a couple more calls if you want to give me a call, 204-780-0893. Yeah, Marvin, have you heard of anywhere other than Lithuania where they've gone beyond self-checkouts?
Well, first, let me just say, why did I use the Lithuania example? The entire population of Lithuania is less than that of Toronto. Oh. It's a country of about 3 million people. Now, most of the stores were not robotic like that, but I found it fascinating that a relatively small country was actually on the leading edge. Amazon has been experimenting with stores that are totally robotic with mixed results. And again, the question is, does the AI technology accurately record what you're taking from the shelves, and thus getting the checkout experience going well? And there have been bugs in it. And I think this is true of any new technology. It takes a while for it to become standard. To give you an example, with the gasoline industry, when we did self-checkout there, people would fill their tanks and then they would go pay. Mm-hmm. And what the gas stations discovered was there was a small number of people who would fill their tanks and then take off. Yeah. And not pay and leave them with the bill. So now it's pretty much a standard procedure that you prepay for your gasoline. It may be the same thing coming to a grocery store, where you go in and you say, I'm going to start off by putting $50 on account. And then when I check out, if I spend less than that, I get the money refunded. I'm not saying that's the future, but it does require a rethinking of the checkout process.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Marvin. It's been great hearing from you, and I think we have another caller with something to talk about on this topic. And but just getting back to the people working with the self-checkouts, I've often noticed that there's a number of people there to help you, and they're incredibly helpful. But it also begs that question of like, why aren't they just standing behind a cash register? But it always surprises me how very, very friendly and patient and helpful they are when they must get a lot of the same kind of questions. But we've got Liz on the line, and we'll just hear what she has to say. Hi, Liz.
Oh, hi. I was just going to say the professor commented that the young people, he mentioned 20-year-olds, I think, much prefer the express checkout, the do-it-yourself thing. Mm-hmm. And he also compared with when you get gas. But when you're getting gas, I go in and get my gas all the time. But I'm only getting gas. His 20-year-olds are probably not shopping for a family of 6 or so. They're going in to get what they need for themselves, or they're one that they live with or something. But if you're doing a large family grocery thing, it is much easier, I think, and I've done it for years, to go through the regular checkout. And when I go through the express, which I do when I don't have much, there's 2 people there helping people if they have trouble. Well, those 2 could open up 2 more things so people could go through faster and there wouldn't be the long lineups. So I just wanted to put in my 2 cents worth.
Well, thank you very much, Liz. That kind of wraps it up really well. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. And I guess we're going to have to say goodbye to you too, Marvin. Thanks so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. And thanks for your insights. And we'll be heading to Lithuania swiftly to see what it's like in the shopping aisles over there. Thanks a lot.
I'm glad to have been with you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Marvin Ryder is Associate Professor of Marketing and Entrepreneurship at McMaster University. And to comment on what you heard today and to keep the conversation going, remember you can leave a message anytime at 204-788-3797.
There are many people who bring success, innovation, accomplishment, and charity to our community. We'd like you to help us meet some of the best. CBC Future 40 will honor 10 Manitobans under 40 making a difference. Help us discover the inspiring people in our province by nominating a shining star in your community today. For details, visit cbc.ca/future40mb.
You're listening to Radio Noon, but in a second, you're going to hear what's happening on Up to Speed. Hello, Faith.
Hello, Lori. We're going to have a guest who has a bunch of firsts under his belt. Mm-hmm. He's midway through his first week of work, and already he's made the top of the list of the most popular employee. And Scooby also happens to be the first accelerant detection dog in Canada trained under a U.S. program, the ATF. So we're going to invite the canine arson dog in studio, but of course he can't talk. So we've also invited someone from the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service to talk more about their new tool in detecting and investigating arsons.
No, you'll be up against some stiff competition, kids and animals in the studio.
So. Yep, it's going to be fun.
Sounds really interesting. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you.
Host Faith Fundal. You can hear them this afternoon from 3 to 6 on Up to Speed. Well, thanks to everybody that called in. Have another chance tomorrow. We'll have another topic. And join me on Radio Noon. And my thanks to Corey Funk and Brad Lillies and Daniel Friesen, Riley Lachuk, and Matt Humphreys. Beautiful day out there, heading for 21 degrees. Let's meet here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.